let's look at the cutting directions for this block. And I'm going to go through with you what I have on the table as we go through what it says here on the sheet. Now, what you need to remember is that you're going to change the colors to be whatever you want them to be. So you have to keep in mind that, for instance, if you use a green fabric where you see this light blue, you would cut that green fabric according to what the light blue says down here. Instead of a lime green center, you may want a red center. So you're going to cut the fabric according to what it says for A right here. Keep that in mind, that your directions are based on what you see here, but you're going to substitute whatever fabrics you have that you want to use in your block. So on the table, I have what I've cut for my block. There is square A. It's a 4" by 4" square. Here is rectangle B. It's a 4" by 2" rectangle. Here is rectangle C. It's a 5½ by 2" rectangle. Here is part D. It's a 2" by 7" rectangle. And here is part E, which is a 2" by 8½ rectangle. So these are some of the parts we need to start making the block. But because you see more colors, you know that there are more pieces that have to be cut. We have to cut a second A out of a different fabric, and you need 2 A's out of this other fabric. So you'll have 4 A's altogether. 1 out of one fabric, 1 out of another fabric. I shouldn't say 1, I should say 2. 2 out of one fabric, 2 out of another fabric. We don't need to cut any more B's. We're going to use the B's that we have here for both of the units that we're going to make. We do need to cut 4 more C's, and I'm cutting those out of the same fabric that I'm using for the second A. And we also need 4 more D strips, and I'm cutting those out of the same fabric from which I'm getting this A. So on the table are the pieces you need to cut, and I need to move them so you can see all of them. If you're taking notes, that's fine. Remember, it's a video and you can rewind it and, bring it back to where you need it to be as many times as you need. But here we have the pieces that will go into that block. Now excuse me, the letters also help us to determine what it is that we put together when. I'm going to move these second fabric pieces out of the way for the time being. I will need them, especially the C, but I'm going to put them over on the side and show you what one of the units would look like using our first set of fabrics. Here's square A. Put square A right there. And I need to put a B on square A, and I'm going to do that here at the top. And since I need 2 units like this, I'll put a B at the top of the other A. And those will be sewn together. And once I've sewn those, I'll show you where we go next. Here are the A's and B's joined together. Now, following the process alphabetically, The next thing I need to add is a C, and I'm going to put one C on this unit and one C on this unit. And once those are sewn, it follows that the next thing we will put is a D, and we move on. So let me get those sewn, and then I will show you the next step. Here is our D sewn on. And you can see once again how the beige buffers between the two African fabrics. Now I need to add D out of the same fabric. So we're going to put D here, and we're going to put D right there. And we're almost through with building our first 2 units for the block. The block has 4 units. And so we get these 2 done, and then I'll show you how we do the next 2. Here are our 2 units completed. And remember I told you this block has 4 units in it. So now we're going to make the second set of units using the beige fabric and our green fabric. I'll just put these aside for the time being. And so here we go again. We start with our A, and A for each of the 2 units. And then we're going to attach a B, and our B is going to be our beige fabric once again. And then we will attach C, like we've done before. And D and E and F, and E, I'm sorry, we don't have an F. So I want to go ahead with these 2 units and then show you where the fun begins. One thing I need to mention as I go along, I want you to notice all seam allowances are pressed toward the piece that was just added. So when I added A to B, notice that the seam allowance is pressed toward B. When I added the AB unit to C, right here, notice that this seam allowance comes toward C. When I added D, you see where the seam allowance is going toward D, and just then I added E, and there's the seam allowance going toward the piece that I just added. And if you keep that in mind, you get a nice flat unit, ultimately a nice flat block. Okay, we're winding down. We now need to add an E to both of these so that we will have them the size that they're supposed to be. So here's an E, and it's going to be the beige fabric again, rather than using an African fabric beside an African fabric. Right here. This will go here, and this will go here. And once we add that, then we'll come back and add that there. And this one right here. And that's going to complete our unit. So let me get those sewn on. Okay, so here are our 4 units. One set of units with the red center, the A, and one set of units with the dark green and brown center. Those are both A's in the middle. Now here's where we get that oblique, that wonkiness in the block. You're going to need a 6.5-inch ruler for this, square ruler. And if you don't have one, you can make one out of cardboard, out of quilters, template plastic, out of anything that's hard enough for you to cut around it or for you to trace around it and then cut. You can use your regular ruler, measure 6 inches on a piece of cardboard all the way around, cut it out, and you'll have just what you need to do the next step. And this is how we get that wonkiness in the block. We're going to take one of the units, and I've put it right here on my smaller cutting board. And you may want to get a smaller cutting board if you don't have one. And if you have one, you want to use it. And in this case, mine is a revolving board, so that as I need to cut around it, I can. Cut around the unit, I can. And so here's my 6.5-inch ruler. And I'm going to just lay that ruler on the unit. And I'll adjust it to get what I want to get out of it. I think I want to use a lot of the center square. And you don't want any points of the ruler off of your unit. All of the ruler points must be on this piece of fabric. And then we're going to cut around it. And here's why you want to use a smaller ruler, so that you can cut without disturbing your unit. And here's our first cut. I think I need to change the blade in my rotary cutter. And as much as I use it, I should be aware of that. Okay, now can you see the wonkiness beginning? That's one of them. Let me cut the others while you're watching. And I might decide this time I'll turn the 6.5-inch ruler in another direction. As long as I have all 4 points on the piece of fabric, that's what's important. So I'm going to leave it as it is and cut this out. Okay, there's the next one. And we can put one like that. And we're going to cut the next two. And you will turn that ruler to whatever degree you like, as long as you make sure all 4 points are on the fabric. You don't want any of the ruler hanging off of the fabric. Here's the next one. You can see the wonkiness beginning. And I'm truly loving that beige in there, because I can really appreciate my African fabrics. And they're doing what I love for them to do, which is to sing and dance and whistle and just make themselves known, and known in a beautiful way, that they are admired for their beauty. And these are scraps. Get those out of the way. And here's a cut I didn't make very well, so I need to get that cut off. Okay. Now let's look at what the block is going to look like. Here we've got, and of course you can arrange these any way you want. I'm just going to put the red where you see the green on there, and then I'm just putting them down like this. But now you see the wonkiness of the block. You see the obliqueness of the block. And I am so pleased with this. You know, a lot of times we start out following a pattern with different fabrics, and we're not quite sure what we're going to get in the end. But I like what I've gotten so far. So now I need to sew this unit to this unit, and sew this unit to this unit, and then I'll have one horizontal seam to sew the whole block together. Okay, quilters, here we are. Here is our block. Gorgeous. You choose what fabrics will work for you. You see how you can use some of your African fabrics in this? Remember that green had a large print, a large design in the print, but we've tamed that down some and we've not lost the integrity of the fabric, which I like. I also like the beige in there because the fabrics really get to stand out. The African fabrics do, and they show their real beauty. But isn't that a great block? And once again, this block was designed by Debbie Bowles. And I'm going to hold that sheet of paper up close to the camera for you so that you can get her information from there. Before I do, remember I told you I plan to make 2 of each block? Well, here is the first one that I've made from Oblique. And here's the second one. Remember the fabrics I showed you in the introduction? And so here we are. I've got my 2 blocks from the Oblique block. They look different, but they're the same block. And one of the things that I like about this block is people think I really worked hard. When I showed some fellow quilters the quilt I made from this block, and they saw all of the little pieces, they thought, oh no, I don't want to do that. I don't have time to sew these little pieces. And of course they focused on that and that. And it looked like I had the patience of Job to sit down and cut all those tiny little triangles out and sew them together. When you and I know it wasn't that at all. It was just a matter of cutting out some squares and some rectangles, sewing them together, and then cutting around them with a 6.5-inch ruler. So this is the end of our first block, and I want you to be on standby for the next block that will be coming your way soon. Thank you for joining me.